Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to discuss about the determination of the equilibrium income and output. To determine this equilibrium level of income and output, there are two approaches. First approach is the aggregate demand and aggregate supply approach, and second is a saving investment approach. So first we will discuss about this aggregate demand and aggregate supply approach. So at equilibrium level, aggregate demand will be equal to aggregate supply. Now what is this aggregate demand? Aggregate demand is the total desired expenditure. What is aggregate demand? Aggregate demand is the total desired expenditure. Now aggregate demand equal to aggregate supply. Now what is this aggregate demand? Aggregate demand is the total desired expenditure. Now this total desired expenditure comprises of planned expenditure on consumer goods and planned investment expenditure on capital goods. Okay. Next, what we can see that planned consumption expenditure is indicated by an upward sloping straight line. Okay, so planned consumption expenditure is indicated by an upward sloping straight line. This means that there is a positive relationship between consumption as income, and which is explained by Keynesian consumption function. What is the Keynesian consumption function? That as income increases, your consumption will also increase. And this planned investment expenditure is indicated by the horizontal line. That means what? Your investment expenditure is independent of level of income. So whatever your level of income is, your investment expenditure will be same all throughout the level of the income. Therefore this investment expenditure is indicated by I, and the desired demand curve, the desired aggregate demand curve is represented by C plus I. Okay, this is a desired aggregate demand curve. This is represented as C plus I curve. Okay, this is represented as C plus I curve, and it is derived by the vertical summation. The vertical summation, it is derived from the vertical summation of C line and this I line. Okay, that means C line is what? This is a consumption expenditure, and I is what? Investment expenditure. And the consumption expenditure and investment expenditure together, if we join, is this vertical summation will give you the C plus I curve, which is the desired aggregate demand curve. Okay, and next is the aggregate supply curve. What is this aggregate supply? Aggregate supply means total value of the goods and services. This is the aggregate supply. Aggregate supply is what? Total value of the goods and services. And what is this aggregate supply curve? This aggregate supply curve is equal to the value of the national product, that is the national income, and this is indicated by the 45-degree line. And this 45-degree line, and this 40-degree line is from the origin. Okay, so this 45-degree line, it shows, this 45-degree line shows both the aggregate supply and the national income. Okay, both the aggregate supply and national income. Okay, this aggregate, this 45-degree line shows both the aggregate supply and national income. Okay, next is what? The aggregate supply. Okay, next is that the aggregate supply is measured by the vertical distance between (45° line and the point on the x-axis. (45° line and point on the x-axis. So what we can tell that the vertical distance is exactly, this vertical distance is exactly equal to the income on the horizontal axis. Okay, so what we can tell that this level of income can measured either on the vertical axis or on the horizontal axis. Both way you can measure. That means either on the vertical axis or horizontal axis. In both way you can measure this vertical distance. In both ways you can measure the level of income. Okay, now let us show this with the help of the diagram. Okay, so this is the diagram of the aggregate demand and aggregate supply. Now this is the investment. This I represent the investment, and that is independent to the level of income. That means whatever, and this is horizontal to the x-axis. On the x-axis we have measured the income and output, on the y-axis we have measured the planned consumption and investment expenditure. So whatever be the level of the income, your investment will not change. Next, this consumption line, that means C, is the upward rising curve. That means with the increase in income your consumption will also increase, but it starts from this point, that is point A. You name it as point A. It starts from this point. That means what? Even if the zero level of income, you have to consume something. That means you are not earning. It doesn't mean that you will not consume. That is why at zero level of income you have to consume something. That is the reason the C curve starts from this A, at point A. C plus I curve is called the aggregate demand curve. It's a vertical summation between consumption and investment. And your aggregate supply curve is indicated by this 45° line. This is the 45° line. Okay, this is the aggregate supply curve. Okay, now where the aggregate demand intersect the aggregate supply at point E, that means this is the equilibrium point, and Y0 is the equilibrium output. This is the equilibrium point where your aggregate demand intersect the aggregate supply curve, and corresponding to it output. This is the output. Okay, next, suppose if the level of the output is different from Y0, so that means at Y0 level of output, what will happen? Your aggregate demand equals to aggregate supply. Now suppose your output is at Y1. At Y1 you see your aggregate supply is greater than aggregate demand. So this cannot be the point, okay, because here what happened, aggregate supply is greater than the aggregate demand. That means what, the firm could not able to sell the entire output because here supply is greater, some unsold stock will be there, and therefore what happened, this reduces the production, and this will, as the production reduces, that means output will decrease, so it is indicated by this arrow. So if your production decreases, what will happen, your level of income will also fall, so this is indicated by this arrow. Next, suppose if y2 is your level of the output, if the economy is producing y2 level of the output, in that case what will happen, at y2 level of the output, aggregate demand is greater than the aggregate supply. At y2 level of the output, see, aggregate demand greater than the aggregate supply. So in that case what will happen, see, your aggregate demand is greater, that means the firm will increase the production because your demand is greater. So in that case the firm will increase the production, and that will be denoted by this arrow. Okay, so in that case, if the production increases, your income will also increase, so it is indicated by this arrow. So that means what, only at y0 level of income there will be an equilibrium output where aggregate demand equal to aggregate supply. Okay, so this much for the today's class. Haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe it, because important videos are discussed here, and this diagram is very much important. Today, level of income and output is determined with the help of aggregate demand and aggregate supply approach. In the next class, we are going to discuss about the saving investment approach. That means how the equilibrium level of income and output is determined by this saving and investment approach. Thanks for watching, and those who haven't subscribed the channel, please subscribe it so that you won't miss out any videos. Thanks for watching.